Hello and welcome to episode 31 of Area Control Bros.
Welcome.
We have a very special episode this week, one in which we delve into the relatively niche subgenre of area control, which is gazebo control.
That's true. That is a subgenre of area control. I think it's got some similar DNA to the what do you call it? What is the gazebo looks just like it.
The pagoda control subgenre,
Yes.
perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, they might even be the same thing, the gazebo control and the pagoda control.
What
What's the one
what
that's got the pagoda?
Huang?
Wong. Okay.
Okay.
Huang's got the pagoda. I mean, there's a lot of Japanese themed, like it's themed around being in Japan and it'll have a pagoda, you
Is
know?
gazebo
The American pagoda?
I mean, what is a pagoda but a gazebo on top of a gazebo, you know?
Hmm.
Although
I think that's fair.
Anyway, this is a retheme. Or sorry, this week we're talking about Gazebo in case it wasn't abundantly obvious. This is a retheme of Chin, which is a older Reiner Knizia game, which was not. I don't think most people would have put it into like their top 10 Reiner games. Maybe some people. But once again, I think Bitewing deliberately took a game that was maybe not like a super well-known classic Reiner game and then tried to update it to be something that could stand shoulder to shoulder with his better received titles. And this one went from a uh, you know ancient not ancient really, but
A pagoda themed.
a pagoda themed game to a gazebo themed game. Let's put
It
it that
actually
way.
did go from pagoda
It
to,
actually did go from pagoda to gazebo. That sounds like a romantic comedy.
yeah.
And they also made it very travel friendly, very small box. It's got a cloth map, several cloth maps, four to be exact. And we got these beautiful little dominoes and some gazebos.
Yeah, and they really want you to travel with it too. They gave you the travel case, whether you wanted it or not, right?
Yeah, so I think when the campaign for this was going on, people wanted the deluxe dominoes as like a thing to get for free for backers that isn't in the retail version. And instead, they were giving out the travel case, which has like a carabiner, as if you're going to go rock climbing or like hiking with this game. Um, and I think most people probably aren't doing that with board games. And so that was kind of a weird misfire, I think. Perhaps there was something going on behind the scenes of the production, but nevertheless, I ended up splashing out for the deluxe dominoes because I think this is the sort of game where um, I'm not sure you're going to get that sensory experience without the dominoes being dominoes, you know?
Yeah, what are the dominoes like? Is it just like chipboard or what?
Yeah, it's
If you
just
don't.
it's cardboard punch board if you get the
Hmm.
non-deluxe dominoes. And I looked at the prototype and read the rule book and I was like, this whole game is the dominoes. So like kind of want to just get the nice dominoes.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good call. Like the game is solid enough. You're gonna have some fun if you get the chipboard stuff, but there is truly a tactile element. It feels good to slam down the domino. You're putting, when you're taking somebody else's gazebo off of it and putting yours down, everything's clicking and clacking together. I think that probably does add a good deal.
But setting the tactility of the game pieces aside, should we dive into what the game is?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. I think
Go ahead, go ahead.
I think just as a quick basic explanation of how this game works, right? You've got three different colors that can go on your dominoes. And so, of course, the combination of each of those three colors is going to make a domino. And then you're also going to have each domino is like two sides, right? So it'll have one of each color. And then, of course, you can also have a domino that's two of the same color. And as it goes, having a domino that's two of the same color is generally a little bit stronger with how this game works. And so we have segregated the dominoes between monocolor and dual color dominoes. And it's a little bit harder to get your monocolor dominoes, let's say. It's essentially a tile laying game that we have here. You are expanding off of other people's dominoes. You can't just place randomly in the middle of the board. You need to place where someone else has a domino. And there are little spots around the map. Depending on which map you have, there will be different types of spots you can go to. They might help you get out more of your gazebos, which is ultimately the goal of the game, is to get out all of your gazebos. Or they might allow you to play an additional time in the case of the vases that we saw. Um, Regardless, you have some incentives on the board for playing in a particular way. And yeah, I think that's kind of the gist of it. And obviously, we'll get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of how the strategy comes out. But ultimately, you are trying to be the best domino player. When do you play which colors? Where do you play those colors? How do you do it in a way that makes it harder for your opponents? And I guess the final, maybe important piece of the general rule breakdown is that the goal with these dominoes is to create conjoined colors, right? Which is part of why that monocolor domino is so good, because on its own it's already enough for you to place a gazebo, because once you've joined two colors together you get to place a gazebo. Um so of course, a domino that already does that is quite strong.
Also, I mean, this is kind of getting into more of the strategy of the game. If somebody else leaves a color open, let's say they leave a blue half of a dual color domino open, you can sort of attach a blue half of a double color domino to it to create what's called a nook in this game and place your gazebo, as Blake said. However, if it is a dual color domino, by definition, you are leaving another color on the other half of that domino open for someone else to do the same. And of course, the advantage of the monocolored domino, one of the many advantages of the monocolored domino, is that you're not, because you've now created either a sequence of two or three colors in a row, maybe more sometimes, depending on the situation. And in order for an opponent to take advantage of that, they have to place their own monocolored domino in order to have a nook next to it. Because if they put the same color, they're just adding to the area controlled by the person who already had control of that nook.
Right, they're
Um,
not contesting it by adding to that continuous streak of color, rather they are helping you.
which
Yeah.
can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. There are times where it might even be right to do that in the three-player game we saw. You certainly can have people either running away with it, or there might be another play that is so important. And with the limited tiles in your hand, you might say, if I need to make Ben's Nook four, continuous blue, you know, spots instead of three, then so be it. That's going to allow me to do this other play that I really, really need. Um, Importantly, once your Nook reaches five continuous pieces, um, then it becomes a like super Nook, or however they should call it, where you get to stack a second gazebo on top, of course, advancing you towards your ultimate goal of playing all of your gazebos, but also becoming stronger in the sort of area control aspect of this game. I don't know if it's fair to call it area control or not. I think that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah.
But these how should you call them? These porches? What the hell did they call them in this game?
Patios.
Patios.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
the patios, not the porches.
Yeah.
Yes,
Circling
the
back.
patios
Yeah.
have a area control thing going on, huh?
Yeah. Circling back to that, isn't two gazebos on top of each other a pagoda?
That's
Didn't
what
we?
we've been saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So,
really, you're making a pagoda with the double gazebo.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think this one's a little bit difficult to conceptualize without playing. I remember that like when Will was explaining it to us like before we played, it was kind of like, okay, I think I'm just gonna have to start slamming some dominoes and see what happens. You know?
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
there's a little bit of that. Definitely, especially in terms of trying to understand like the strategy, right, from a base level, because
Yep.
there are some things that don't feel very obvious at first, but then after you've even played just a few rounds, you're suddenly going, "Ah, man, I can't expand towards that patio. It's going to give this guy such a good play." Or, "Ooh, I really need to be careful about leaving this particular color open because whatever it may be, right?" But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at least for me, we played it like three times, and I'm not sure I even know like even have an idea of like what is like a very good play. Like I think there's like some of that where like I could like somebody put something down and I go, "Oh man, wow, they just put down like three gazebos. That was crazy." But like I don't think this is one. I mean, it's very much one that you're playing your hand. And I also think it's one that has quite a bit of depth to the point where like there's a lot of stuff that you could do on any given turn. And like a lot of room for like making interesting plays or setting up interesting plays or making a like complete misplay.
I think this definitely feels more abstract than any other Reiner game I can think of. And it does have a kind of chess-like quality to certain situations. I think putting like it feels like you're putting someone in check if you add enough to a contiguous pile of like a chain of colors and dominoes, such that if you're uncontested, your next move may join them, which in this game, if you join a larger group of colored dominoes to a smaller group of the same color, then you kind of area control, take it over, and that can become like a big one. Or even if you already had a big one, you just the important thing is more that you're denying your opponent control of it, and then now your control of that, which will almost certainly be a double gazebo at that point, will extend to whatever they were connecting it to, and maybe even have some sort of cascading effect of stealing patios and things. And so oftentimes it's very difficult to be in a situation where you can both set up a kind of takeover and perform the takeover. And so a lot of the sort of strategy of this game, I feel like, is putting someone in check to force them to respond in a way that they may not be able to do in a way that advances their own game. But maybe you just putting in check is something you can do to that like kind of maybe while being aggressive and while maybe not being like the best thing you can do, it does advance your game state and it does force them to be on the defensive. And I think that feels like a big strategic component of this game.
Yeah, it does feel like most of the strategy lies in trying to set up as many like problems for your opponents as possible and like give them as few moves as you possibly can. Um, at least in the game that we played last, it felt like a lot of the time I was like, I had in my hand the ability to like put a fifth like color into a chain on like some of my stuff, which would have gotten me like another gazebo out. But I like knew that I kind of had that in the bag, like or like it would have you guys both would have had to coordinate to deny me getting like one gazebo, which would have like also set each other up for stuff. So it felt like, it was like, okay, well, I can wait on that until like that's the only play that I have. And it feels like there's a lot of that thinking going on of like, okay, like, and I think there's a lot of just also like you want to just kind of be like everywhere so that you have like the potential to set up plays like in different parts of the board.
Yeah. I think that's a good insight on the strategy. This idea that, hey, where can I be on the board, right? Set up these different plays. Where do I not need to focus my attention because that play is almost certainly going to be there once I need it? In this example that Ben's talking about, I think of a situation with the last game that we played where, yes, he did have four continuous, I think it was blue, tiles in a row. And at any given time, he would have, three different spots that he could put down another blue and turn that into a fiver instead of a four. Did he need to turn it into five for area control reasons at any point? No, it really was just sitting there waiting for the play. And as Ben has pointed out, if Will and I wanted to stop him, because in this case he was ahead and he might need to be knocked down a peg, it would have taken both of our turns and also would have been very difficult to stop without also opening up a new color to be put down. Meanwhile, this idea of like, hey, because I can just leave that and focus threats elsewhere, you almost create sort of a tempo that you're playing out so many problems to deal with that other people can't. And so when left unchecked for a little bit, early squabble between the other two players, you can really take a good lead. And I think recognizing those opportunities is where maybe some of that chess-like quality in this game does come from. Obviously, you do have a random draw into your hand. You're only carrying 3 tiles in any given time. And so it's hard to draw a full comparison to a game like chess where, perfect information at any given moment, and there's not really this element of randomness. But I do think that that ability to recognize your opportunities, ability to recognize where you might gain a little bit of tempo on the board based on squabbles between others is very interesting, is very important to the strategy, and is frankly quite fun to explore because there might be something where you think you've set up a great play, and as it goes, um, there's enough depth in this game, even with only just some dominoes and a board. Classic Reiner Knizia sort of feel to this one. Few things to do, but many things to consider, so to speak. Yeah, it really does come together in an interesting way.
Yeah, I would be very interested to see what like, and this will never happen probably, but like what the like top level of play would look like in this game. Like if like the Grand Master of Gazebo, like the people dueling it out. Like I'm kind of interested in the game theory of like what is the like what do you start considering after like you like start pushing up against the skill ceiling? Because I do have a sense that the skill ceiling on this is quite high. Like I think that you could eventually become really good at this game, to the point where you'd like beat, most other people. I think like probably you have to start like thinking about like what other people have in their hands. I think at some point you'd like memorize the distribution of like dominoes, but like, you know, that gets into like way far out. I think it's very fun to I think it's got a low skill floor. Like it's very easy to hop into, and that's the thing that I quite like about this game is that level of like simplicity with the extreme depth. And as you said, Reiner Knizia is very good at this. I would expect nothing less, you know?
I'm not sure that counting dominoes is going to be a crucial element of like high level meta in the dual color pile. But in the monocolor pile, I do think that even at our level of
Yeah.
play, the ability to recognize like, oh, like a lot of those green doubles have come out, like
Right.
probably, because there are only 27 of the monocolored ones, 9 of each color. Because of that, and because a lot decent amount of them are going to be in the reserve, and you can only be accessed by going to those spots on the board that let you draw from the reserve instead of your kind of personal deck of them. Um, I think it's probably easier to be like, well, they probably do not have a double blue at this point in the game, you know? And I think that's probably easier, but I think the dual colored domino stack it's very difficult to be like, oh, maybe they don't have any blue at all if they're like sitting on 3 dual colored dominoes. Because the odds of at least one half of those 3 dominoes being blue is so high that I don't think it would like strategically make sense to like gamble on them not having blue or something. But I do think that just to fight back against my own point, I think that that also depends on player count. I think at 4 players, maybe you're probably able to have an even better idea of like what's remaining in the pool because people are like pulling everything out of the reserve at that point. I mean, it's probably I don't know, it's 5 each, so it'd be 15, 27. So at 4 players would be 20. So there'll only be 7 mono-colored dominoes in the reserve, um, instead of 12 like there were in our plays, mostly at 3 player. So yeah, I think it is interesting. I do think this game changes drastically at player count, which is pretty interesting,
Hmm.
um, as well. Because of course in 3 plus 3 and 4 players, you have this political angle that doesn't exist at 2 player. And then at two player, it's a knife fight in a phone booth where there's no room for negotiation. It's much more pure abstract healing. The strategy of trying to prevent your opponents from having a good play after you played is of course consistent, but the ability to sort of say to someone like, "Hey, let me do this and I'll help you do that," or to deal with the person who's ahead of us both, of course, doesn't exist in two player.
Yeah. Yeah, that aspect is definitely going to change. One thing on that, I was sort of thinking about what is this game going to feel like at four players? And I think it's pertinent with your comment on how much this will change there, right? Especially in relation to ability to count on the monocolored, right? The double one colored dominoes. And just as a bit of background for anybody listening, what Will's talking about there, where there would only be seven in the reserve versus 12 at three players. Essentially, when you draw your opening hand, you get three dual colored dominoes, and you're always able to pull a new dual colored domino after a play. But you also have the option to take one monocolored domino. You've got a stack of five of them at the beginning, and you slowly go through that stack and just choose to draw one instead of a dual colored domino as you please. So it's sort of this interesting limited resource alternative draw. There's also some spots on the board that allow you to get into the reserve. Um, Realistically, when you're playing a three-player game, you're not going to go through the whole reserve. And so you just have less info, right? There's a little bit more variance on what's left. Whereas at four-player, you can see how if, there's, let's say, four spots on the board that get you an additional monocolored domino out of the reserve, and there's only seven starting in the reserve, all of a sudden throughout at the end of the game there's really only three dominoes that people don't see. And so as you're making some of those in-game plays, you might be operating on like, well, he has one of five dominoes. And of course you can see how when there's a choice between five instead of a choice between 12, depending on the variance earlier in the game, those five might have a much more predictable distribution than 10 dominoes would. With that being said, I got to imagine that the bigger difference between three and four players is just time between turn. Because, man, even at three, it seems that the board changes so much and the opportunities available to each player are so dependent on, kind of who went right before them. But, occasionally you will have sort of multiple opportunities open up on the board. And, that can be kind of interesting. I guess now as I'm speaking about it, I'm sort of convincing myself that maybe four player wouldn't feel all that different because, again, my experience is that mostly you're playing off of the opponent directly before you rather than, two back. But what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wonder about four player. I don't know how, because there would presumably be like more double color dominoes into the pile as well. You got like a whole nother player that has a stack of five, and then you still have parts on the board where you can draw more. So like I think you'd see more of that, where you'd see more people playing the or sorry, the monocolored one, the one that's got like two of the same colors. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I agree a little bit with your assessment that I think that like I feel like the time between turns would feel a lot more. I mean, I obviously would have to play it at four, but this strikes me that it might be best at three. I'm not sure how it would play at
Do you see
four,
my
you know?
point though, where that was my thought at first, and then as I started talking about it, I
Yeah.
went, well, at the same time, I felt like I was always playing, so the way that we were playing in our rotation as we went was Ben would play, then I would play, then Will would play. And the percentage of time that I was playing off of Ben's last domino was way higher than the percentage of time I was playing off of Will's last domino, just based on the fact that, hey, if I am playing a dual color domino, most of the time I am connecting one of those colors to an existing domino on the board, and the other one is a new prong that can be played off of. Now, some of the better plays in the game are when you don't do that, and maybe you make a double connection. And now all of a sudden the next opponent's looking and saying, well, where the hell do I go? But often this is the case, right? And so that's where I'm getting at. Maybe four players doesn't actually feel so different if you are usually playing off of the person before you, anyways.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I can see that. I I don't know. My intuition still t tells me that like also the like percentage of the board that you are personally responsible for is going to go down like a significant chunk, you know? Like the
Yeah,
amount of plays that you actually have are going to be a lot less.
right.
Um, and I think that like definitely four player has to end most often with the board just getting full, right? Because like we had, I think, did we? I think we had like one game, or maybe it was two. It wasn't all of them that ended with like somebody getting all of their gazebos out. And even if they did get all their gazebos out, it wasn't like middle of the game. It was
No, it's
like,
like the board was almost full. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have to take responsibility for forgetting to mention that you have fewer gazebos the higher the player
uh,
count
Okay. Yeah.
to
That's
start
how they
with.
balance around that.
And
So
so,
so then
yeah,
that would imply, hey, you probably have a similar length of game while making a,
wait,
less total plays.
were we playing with all of the gazebos though? Like I
that's
thought.
why I apologized.
Oh, okay.
We
So we were
there
playing with
were
more than we
yeah,
were
yeah. I
supposed to
think
have.
so I think the games where we had where it came down to who had like when the board was basically played out and people still had gazebos, I think that would have come down that would have ended slightly sooner because
Sure.
somebody I don't remember I'd have to go find
Yeah.
the actually I can go find the rule book at some point, but it's
Yeah.
suffice to say you have it's the typical like fewer gazebos per additional player that is added to the game.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I guess you don't know offhand how much you take out.
I can look it up. We have the technology.
Yeah. Google does
I,
is
uh,
there.
Speaking to your point though, I think that's fair. Regardless of if you're playing off of the person right before you or not, that might make the game feel more similar to three player than I was initially thinking. But I do have to agree with you. This idea that, hey, you're going to have a similar length of game because you're more or less filling up the board before someone wins. And you're going to be doing, a little bit less of that. You're going to be responsible for about 25% of that instead of 33%. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a slightly less action-packed game for each player at four.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody likes each other. You have a little conversation.
Yeah.
It's five fewer gazebos at three, and then it's four fewer at four. So it's 24 at two, 19 at three, and 15 at four.
Interesting. Okay, so if we had five less gazebos, yeah, the games would have probably actually ended a good deal sooner, huh?
Yeah, because I think that actually makes me like the game more because I did feel like once you get to the point where in three player where like somebody has six gazebos left, let's say, and they make a play, like I feel like at that point the game stagnates a little bit into the end game
Hmm.
because it's like, well, there's not much I can do.
Yeah.
That said, in the very last game we played, there was a kind of a little bit of excitement at the very, very end
Yeah,
where
just
Yeah.
like
around like
where I
Ben
was
trying to get over
trying
the hump and us trying to
I
stop him.
and I was trying to like make some big play at the very end when I think we were probably like all at five gazebos left or less in Ben's case.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that was an exciting moment too. And I want to go back to one of Ben's earlier points about, hey, maybe at top level, theoretical top level play, you're also counting the dual color dominoes a bit. I actually tend to agree that technically could, especially as you get towards the end of the game and you might have had a different run out of different colors. Because there were some moments at the end of the game that it didn't matter, does the opponent just have one side of any of their dominoes that's a particular color? It can actually matter, do they have this specific dual color domino? And at that point, maybe it really does matter. Again, I don't think that anybody in their right mind would necessarily want to play that, but in a theoretical world where, let's say, rather than chess as an abstract game that is sort of evolved, with the culture and is this, you know, this monument to, you know, board gaming, abstract, everybody knows about it. It's this thing that is like part of the culture, right? let's say that that's Gazebo, and there truly are people who make a career out of being grandmasters at Gazebo. I could see them really, needing to understand these ratios as it rolls out, and there is something kind of fascinating about that. It's
Yeah.
realistically, don't do it, but it is kind of fascinating,
It
right?
is weird. At the top level, I think that you would end up with this being somewhat poker-like as well. Like, because there would probably be a little bit of like a bluff game going on.
Yeah.
It's got a
Does
little
he
bit
have
of
the pink
like,
blue? Does he
yeah.
have the, and it's like, if it's me, yes, I have three of them, you know?
Yeah, true, true. He always has a pink blue.
Oh man. So I I want to speak to a concern I have with the game, which is the strength of the double domino and the relationship that that has to turn order and potentially first player advantage. I don't know this to be true, just a hunch, but it seems to me that there might be a bit of a first player advantage in this game related to the power of the double domino. There was on the map that we played with the vases, I think actually a first player disadvantage. There's a particular map where after the first player plays, it opens up very strong plays to the rest of the opponents, no matter what they do on their first play. Um, but I think that on the other map that we played, and I believe the other two, three of the four maps that we looked at, there probably is actually a first player advantage related to being the first to have the opportunity to take a double domino. Of course, this is a game where you're playing off your opponents. If your opponent leaves you a good play, you're going to take advantage of that. And these advantages can sort of cascade when you have patios available to you. Well, what I've noticed, and I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts, is that the double dominoes ability to take a patio early without leaving a good opportunity that isn't like a multi-turn opportunity to take that patio from that player is very, very strong. So that's kind of just a thought I wanted to throw out there and hear your guys' opinion on.
Yeah, I think it's the core of that kind of if you work backwards from like what causes you to think the double dominoes are strong to what causes you to think about first player advantage or disadvantage is really the part of the rule set that consists of the control of the patios. And the relevant rule is that you have to have more gazebos to change control. I think this would be quite different if it were the case that at the point where you have the same number of gazebos as somebody else around the patio, you like maybe strip the gazebos out of the patio and you've at least sort of denied that until there's a majority. But in the game, the way it is that even if you have the same number of gazebos bordering a patio, you can't get it until you have more. And it may sound obvious, but in the game, like it can be quite difficult to break through that initial push, which Blake is talking about, which is just getting one gazebo adjacent. Now, from a position of disadvantage, because they used a monocolored domino, unless you place your own monocolored domino, which by itself only gets one gazebo, you then from there have to use two monocolored dominoes to be able to generate enough gazebos to take over this one patio. And at that point, you've used two of your five monocolored dominoes that you might have
Right.
all game because you might not get a sixth or seventh depending on, how things evolve. And so you have to spend a lot of scarce resources to be able to really properly contest it. And as a result, I think a lot of the time the best way to contest a patio isn't by aggressively using your monocolored tiles like that, but rather by devising a complex narrow path to connect one of your existing double gazebo nooks to the patio, and then maybe with one of your gazebos already there, and that way sort of sneakily try to take it without doing it as obviously. And
Yeah.
but even that's quite difficult. I mean, whoever in most of the time, whoever first takes control of a patio has the patio for the bulk of the game. It's not going to be changing hands that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in theory the disadvantage of taking a double tile is that it reduces the likelihood that you have any one color within hand to respond to these situations that come up where someone has left sort of a prong out there that could be a new nook. And it's like, well, if you've taken three double color dominoes into your hand, just in theory, the likelihood that you have a red domino is much lower, right? A red domino to connect to this new red prong. It's much lower than if you had three dual color dominoes. And so you can see how just taking one dual color domino could result in a situation where you're less likely to have the color you need in any given situation. But of course, you can just before you take your dual color domino, take this into consideration, look at your hand and say, well, I better leave it where the two tiles I have remaining, other than this dual color domino, color all three of the colors. And often you can do this. So I don't know, just something interesting in regards to the balance of this game, something where I think that there can be an advantage that sort of cascades from taking your dual color dominoes early and continuing with that. I think as we play this more, I'll have a better feel on how much of an advantage that is, or maybe it's actually a misplay, right? And can be properly countered. But
Yeah, I think the counterplay is just to do the same thing but at a different patio is kind of my
yeah,
intuition on it. Is
yeah, that
like,
was my intuition as well. And but yeah,
um,
It is, I think it does remind me of Huang in that the game is kind of difficult to parse sometimes, in the sense that like I don't know if this is right, but like I'm gonna do it. And there are some times where you have a clear great play. Like if somebody sets you up for a double gazebo play or unknowingly allows you to connect something to a patio and steal it, obviously these plays do arise, but I feel like a lot of the time it's sort of like, well, nothing feels great, but I
yeah,
guess I'll do
I
this,
can get one more patio while setting someone else up to get one more patio, right? That's yeah.
yeah. Anyways, ratings?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure, sure.
You want to hit us with your rating first, Will?
Gosh, it's so much responsibility though.
I've got mine in the brain.
I've
I've got
been
my number.
It's not that it's going to change depending on what you guys say, but I'm actually like pretty conflicted on like what I want to give this game. I can go first. I think I'm going to give it an 8.5. I think this is like an interesting one where like it can really move up or down depending on like how the long-term strategy develops and like maybe even how I feel about certain maps because I think right now the beginner map feels quite balanced but there is this sort of nagging sensation of like whether or not certain maps have like a first player advantage or a first player disadvantage or to what extent. Obviously, it's the nature of board games that there's going to be some minor advantage or disadvantage to being at certain points in the turn order. But I think if we play like the other maps more and sort of get a feel for them, if we can find like one map we really like, and I feel like that the game feels more balanced and like interesting in that map in particular, we can like stick with it. And I think this game goes up to a 9 easy. Especially because I think there is this really interesting thinky space with this game that's very Knizia-ish. Um, but I think I like this game more than Huang. I don't like it as much as Samurai and Iliad, and it's in like if I'm comparing these sort of Knizia tile layers, and I think 8.5 is in between, sitting in between those games for where I'm at right now. Um, yeah, but otherwise, I really like this game, and it's very portable, very small, probably the most portable of these Knizia tile layers, I think. Although the Huang box is also kind of if you kind of sat on this box and squashed it pancake, it'd probably be kind of like the Huang box, right? Because the Huang is like very thin, but it's kind of more,
Right.
surface area on the top.
Yeah.
But overall, really like this. I think I will say differently from Huang and Samurai and maybe Iliad. I think this might be the most approachable of the Kinesia tile layers. especially because dominoes are kind of something familiar to people who aren't like big board game nerds like us, and sort of it being color coded and it not being like, here's this samurai is a fast samurai and this, the boats can go on the outside or in Huang, you got like 50 more rules. Like Huang is like probably a full point 0.5 weight above this, I think, maybe even more.
Yeah,
This
and
is
Samurai's got kind of the fucky win condition, you know?
Samurai is yeah, this is the other thing is this game is a very easy to understand win condition, which is just get all your gazebos down. Get as many of your gazebos down. That's it. There's nothing strange with like multiple suits of things you're trying to control. And so this is very teachable. And that is another thing that in the long run, maybe my score for this goes up over time because I'm like, hey, I can just teach this to anybody. And they may not become grandmasters in a sitting, which is a good thing for a game. You want to have that longevity, but they'll at least be able to pick it up and play like right away and sort of understand what's going on as soon as they slap a few dominoes and gazebos down. And that's got to count for something. And that's me.
Yeah. I'm in a similar boat to you. I'm throwing out the eight, but I think this is of the titles we've examined, the one that I feel the most like the score may change, especially since even with giving it like three plays, I'm not sure how I like, I don't think this is ever going to be a solved game. I don't think this is ever going to be like this is the dominant strategy or whatever. It's, but it is probably one of my favorite abstract games that we've played. Although bringing up Samurai, I don't know, they're on a similar level for me. This one might be a little bit quicker than Samurai. I think we got like three games done in 3.5 hours with the teach.
Well,
So
well,
like,
we were chatting. I'd say it was probably three games, like maybe 45, 50 minutes a piece, if I had to guess.
yeah, so
Yeah.
this is like on the, I don't know what I gave Rumble Nation, but this is like on the like Rumble Nation level of like time scale, which is like a pretty difficult niche to like get into. There's like not very many games that like run you about that much time. And we were even playing like apparently the longer version of this game
Yeah,
where
we
we
were
had more
actually
gazebos. So
by accident. Sorry.
yeah. Like this should be like, I mean this is just a nice I think like gateway game. I mean like it definitely passes the grandma test if we're talking that. You can teach this to your grandma no problem. Um yeah, I don't know. And for that reason I'm kind of like, well, I think if you're looking for like an abstract game that's between 2 to 4 players and is very quick and teachable, it's like I don't know what else exists in this niche that does it better. Um, so I don't know. Like that sounds like a potentially a 10. Like it is, I don't think it's a 10 for me, but it's like it's certainly very good. And I'm willing to go up like higher eventually. But yeah, I got to play this a couple more times.
Yeah. I think that the piece I will agree with you both on is that I also have a little bit of uncertainty around my score and could see it going higher. Um, Frankly, I am a good deal lower than both of you. I'm going to be giving this game a 7. And I was between a 7 and a 7.5. Feel more comfortable with the 7 because my concern with the strategy in this game is that there might be a true like dominant follow this path sort of strategy. And that would be, yeah, taking your dual tile and then playing that dual tile right away, every round for the first, well, not the first 5 rounds, but the second through sixth rounds. And the reason I feel that way is that not only is that the best way to get a patio, and taking a patio is going to be extremely powerful, but also it's very hard for the opponent to play off of you once you've played a dual tile. And I think that not only is that a potential problem from a like gameplay balancing and like I want to have like real strategy that I'm making a decision rather than it feels like I need to make this decision of bringing out the dual tile. But also, I worry about how much fun the rest of the players are having if everybody is always bringing out a dual tile, right? Because there's less to play off of. That being said, of course, if I, end up feeling that that's not the case, that that's not how this game plays, that the reality is that there's much more to explore, this game would go up in rating for me. But as it stands, I think it is solid. It does a good amount with the time that you have to play with this game. Um, but I find it to be the weakest of the Reiner Knizia titles that I've played. I would prefer any of the others that we've done to this at present, save for the novelty of it and being able to explore a new one. And I do think it hits a lot of the same marks that most of the Knizia games do hit of, hey, being, relatively simple. There's not a ton of complexity in terms of the components, but there is a ton of complexity in terms of what you can do with them. Uh, I feel that perhaps this one didn't have quite enough depth to get over that hump of, linear play patterns, let's say.
Yeah, I do think that if we put, when we play this again, my general strategy is going to be at least having the double tile in my hand. Like I think that it is not bad. I think your first draw should probably be like a double tile, and then like maybe make a play with like one of your other tiles if the opportunity presents itself. Because I just think the power of having it in your hand is like,
Right.
like good enough.
That
You know,
immediate punish as soon as somebody puts you within 2 squares of a patio is pretty insane. Um, and again, that's another problem for me because you also now have this variance that gets added in that isn't necessarily a feel good element where, okay, somebody puts me within 2 tiles of a patio, but I hit the 1 out of 3 chance that the, tile that I have, the monocolor tile that I have is the same color as their patio that extends toward, or as the same color as their nook that extends towards that tile. And so now my play is mute. And even though, in theory I've done the right thing, I'm just shut down. And this is it's like that's like a huge swing being the first one to the patio or not, right? So
Mm.
that's sort of where I land with it. I'm hoping to be found wrong on this one, but perhaps through overconfidence, I do feel like that might end up being the case with this one.
You've convinced me. I'll provisionally lower my rating to an 8. I think it I probably was like I'm just giddy to be playing pretty much every Reiner game.
Yeah, I mean, me too, right? Like there is a lot
And
of
so
fun
I
there.
it's tough for me to unravel that and be like, okay, take a step back. I think I should probably put it on the same level as Huang for me. So probably 8 makes sense. I think the thing is that I think I'm giving it more credit because like I said, you can just teach this so quickly and so easily.
Yeah. And that
And
is valuable.
that is something. And Huang, I think the game evolves in a really interesting way, and it tells like the really a really funny story. And I do think it's the closest game to this for me in a lot of ways, in the sense that I get I'm in so like there's the Reiner part of the cortex, right?
Hmm.
But within that part of the cortex, there are different spaces. And I think Huang in this game occupy almost the same space in where I always get that like I may have made the biggest mistake of my entire life by putting this
Right.
tile here.
Yeah, there is
know?
those moments in this one.
And
Um,
also that kind of like we talked about that kind of murky like mid game like I don't know what to do. I mean like I'll just do this and hopefully that doesn't mess up things too bad. I think Samurai is so much more focused
hmm.
and ironically with a much weirder win condition, but the actual like minute to minute like gameplay of Samurai is like I'm locked in. There may be multiple plays you can make, but I feel like I at least know what I'm trying to do. You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and Samurai so takes advantage of, to like a good extent, the hidden information element of like you don't know exactly how many of each of these totems I have. And I think that that game is improved so much by that. Whereas with Gazebo, right, there is some value, of course. Like think about Gazebo versus Huang. How much clearer it is that you've made a good play in Gazebo because boom, I just placed down, two, maybe even three gazebos in one tile lay. And it's like, I feel great about it, whereas in Huang, so often you might have made the winning play by connecting, two regions and causing this war, but you might not even know it until the end, or maybe even not after the end of the game, right? And so there's always like a balance between murkiness versus information. And Samurai, I think, does a great job of like, you feel good because you got the thing, but there's also this murkiness of like, will it even matter in the end game when we tally this up? I might be behind in that category and it doesn't matter. Versus, okay, Huang, you have no idea if it matters, and then you have, a lot more clarity here in Gazebo. So it is interesting.
Yep.
I'll also say seven's a pretty good rating, right? I'm really excited to try the remaining maps on this. There's a real chance that I play one of the remaining maps and I go, God, like if you only play this one map, this game's like a 10, like there is enough here to grab onto that
That's why I'm
has
so
me excited.
uncertain is like this could swing like a point and a half in either direction for me, I think, like depending on how it pans out.
Yeah.
I
I'm
will
excited for the raised patios in particular.
well, I think that the raised patios, I guess when we do our end of the year episode, we'll have to mention how we feel about Gazebo, like, now referring to then. Um, because I think the raised patios in the other maps are an acknowledgement of this sort of like aggressive rush down double domino strategy, which is to say they're patios that if you connect a monocolored domino from someone else's prong to those raised patios, you do not get the patio. Like
Right.
you do have a patio that's next to it for like, later, but what you're doing now is you're opening up the field for everybody to start contesting that patio. And so I do think that the raised patios may be really essential to making this game feel more balanced for like player order and counterplay. Because I think this game really shines the most when it feels like everybody is fighting over something and like interacting and like trying to take things from each other. It's like at its least interesting when somebody does make that monocolored domino play to a patio and it's like, well, there's nothing really great I can do about that for another, 10
Right.
turns.
And it
You
has
know,
been mentioned, okay, I guess I need to do the same play elsewhere on the map, and
But
hopefully it's available
sometimes
to me.
that's not available to you, and so it really does feel like, well, I guess we're just hanging out. I'll just expand something I already have, and hopefully eventually I can contest it in late game.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. I will say, my understanding from what you told us on this game, Will, is that one of the big differences between this game and Chen that it has re-implemented is related to how you draw your mono-colored dominoes. Um, am I remembering that correct?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that because I don't remember all the details.
Da, 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 da. I think it used to be that the monocolored dominoes and yeah, okay, sorry, I had to refresh myself. But the monocolored dominoes and the double colored dominoes were all in one pile.
Yeah,
And so you would only ever draw back up to hand size, up to three in this game, after playing a tile from this. Like you didn't have the ability to have the reserve and your personal deck of five, and also the guaranteed pile of double colored dominoes. You
right,
only ever refilled to hand size from that. And so in that sense, it was probably closer to some of these other games like Huang or something where everybody just refills from the bag. Whereas this game in its current state, like Gazebo versus Chin, has separated it kind of into different decks. Um, I'm not, so there are two angles to this. One
mhm,
is that one of the balance things we're talking about is the fact that you can 100% consistently get a monocolored tile on turn two, basically, or have it ready for turn two to play.
right,
Whereas in Chen, whether or not you have one is completely random. Like, and maybe even your opening hand had one, which honestly, on the very first turn of the game, it probably doesn't matter that much, actually. Like, you probably don't even want to play it on the first turn because that would be kind of a waste almost. But I can see how it's kind of a mixed bag because it's the consistency of having access to the monocolored tiles, which does provide the possibility of sort of a streamlined play pattern. But I don't necessarily think it's worse than if somebody just gets lucky and draws a bunch of monocolored tiles and somebody never sees one all game, you know?
Right.
So I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's an interesting trade-off to me as well. For the reasons you've mentioned, of course. The one that I'll add is this point I brought in earlier about, well, how likely am I to be able to play off I'm going to call it like an open prong on the board, right? Where there's a single color that's not been made into a nook. Well, when you have control over the number of monocolored dominoes in your hand, you have control over how likely you are to be able to play off of a prong, right? And so one of the disadvantages that can come um, with the variance of possibly just drawing three monocolored dominoes and not having a say in it is that your ability to play off of these open prongs might be greatly decreased. And I don't think that like disadvantage, let's say, of potentially having a bunch of these really strong tiles is enough to negate them being really strong tiles. Because, playing off the prong, as I'm calling it, is again just worth one nook, and it also still opens up a new prong most of the time for another player. Whereas if you just have a bunch of these dual colors, then you're happy anyways. You're still getting a nook when you play it if you so choose. So yeah, I would tend to say we've got a really good change here. There just are some maybe unexpected implications that you probably need to solve with map design. And so again, really excited, really eager to get into the what the expansion content maps is what I think they are.
Yeah, yeah. There's like a bonus. The map, the so-called map expansion is literally just like one cloth map that's double-sided and it's two maps. And it's kind of they are more advanced, but as we're talking about, we think maybe the third map in particular might be the one.
Yeah. The maps had me quite excited for another play. So I think that's all I have on this one though.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Right on.
All right. Well, do you want to do the sign off, Ben?
Oh man, I don't remember what it was.
It
I think
was
it's
it was
new every time.
it was see you next round or something,
Oh
wasn't it?
yes. See,
He's already forgotten it.
see you next round.